Welcome to A Year of War and Peace. I'm your host, Brian E. Denton. A Year of War and Peace is a daily, year-long, chapter-by-chapter reading of and meditation on Leo Tolstoy's epic novel, War and Peace. In these videos and podcasts, you'll be treated to a free reading of one chapter per day of the novel, plus a reflective essay I've written individually tailored to that day's chapter. These readings are offered for free, though if you'd like to support me, you can do so in one of three ways. First, you could purchase my ebook, A Year of War and Peace. It features the entire novel, plus all of my reflective essays, and it's only $2.99 on Amazon.com. You could also become a patron at patreon.com/BrianEDenton. If you sign up there, you'll receive a sonnet once a month, plus a link to an ebook of my collected sonnets. Finally, if you like, you can make a one-time donation to my PayPal account. The email there is brianedenton@gmail.com. You can also use that email to contact me. I'd be happy to hear from you. Your support is greatly appreciated. Today's reading and reflection is on Chapter 264. Chapter 264. Nicholas sat leaning slightly forward in an armchair, bending closely over the blonde lady and paying her mythological compliments with a smile that never left his face. Jauntily shifting the position of his legs in their tight riding breeches, diffusing an odor of perfume, and admiring his partner, himself, and the fine outlines of his legs in their well-fitting Hessian boots, Nicholas told the blonde lady that he wished to run away with a certain lady here in Vorezhnev. Which lady? A charming lady, a divine one. Her eyes, Nicholas looked at his partner, are blue. Her mouth coral and ivory, her figure, he glanced at her shoulders, like Diana's. The husband came up and sullenly asked his wife what she was talking about. "Ah, Nikita Ivanitch!" cried Nicholas, rising politely, and as if wishing Nikita Ivanitch to share his joke, he began to tell him of his intention to elope with the blonde lady. The husband smiled gloomily, his wife gaily. The governor's good-natured wife came up with a look of disapproval. "Anna Ignatievna wants to see you, Nicholas," said she, pronouncing the name so that Nicholas at once understood that Anna Ignatievna was a very important person. "Come, Nicholas. You know you let me call you so." "Oh, yes, aunt. Who is she?" "Anna Ignatievna Macienieva. She has heard from her niece how you rescued her. Can you guess?" "I rescued a lot of them," said Nicholas. "Her niece, Princess Bolkonskaya. She is here in Vorezhnev with her aunt." "Oh, how you blush. Why, Not a bit. Please don't, aunt." "Very well, very well. Oh, what a fellow you are." The governor's wife led him up to a tall and very stout old lady with a blue headdress who had just finished her game of cards with the most important personages of the town. This was Malvintsevna, Princess Mary's aunt on her mother's side, a rich, childless widow who always lived in Vorovnesh. When Rostov approached her, she was standing, settling up for a game. She looked at him, and screwing up her eyes sternly, continued to upbraid the general, who had won from her. "Very pleased, mon cher," she said, then, holding out her hand to Nicholas. "Pray, come and see me." After a few words about Princess Mary and her late father, whom Malvintsevna had evidently not liked, and having asked what Nicholas knew of Prince Andrew, who was also evidently no favorite of hers, the important old lady dismissed Nicholas after repeating her invitation to come to see her. Nicholas promised to come, and blushed again as he bowed. At the mention of Princess Mary, he experienced a feeling of shyness and even of fear, which he himself did not understand. When he had parted from Macienievna, Nicholas wished to return to the dancing, but the governor's little wife placed her plump hand on his sleeve and, saying that she wanted to have a talk with him, led him to her sitting room, from which those who were there immediately withdrew, so as not to be in her way. "Do you know, dear boy," began the governor's wife with a serious expression on her kind little face, "that really would be the match for you. Would you like me to arrange it?" "Whom do you mean, aunt?" asked Nicholas. I will make a match for you with the princess. Catherine Petrovna speaks of Lily, but I say, no, the princess. Do you want me to do it? I am sure your mother will be grateful to me. What a charming girl she is, really. And she is not at all so plain, either. Not at all, replied Nicholas, as if offended at the idea. As befits a soldier, aunt, I don't force myself on anyone or refuse anything, he said before he had time to consider what he was saying. Well then, remember, this is not a joke. Of course not. Yes, yes, the governor's wife said, as if talking to herself. But, my dear boy, among other things, you are too attentive to the other, the blonde. One is sorry for the husband, really. Oh no, we are good friends with him, said Nicholas in the simplicity of his heart. It did not enter his head that a pastime so pleasant to himself might not be pleasant to someone else. But what nonsense I've been saying to the governor's wife, thought Nicholas suddenly at supper. She will really begin to arrange a match. And Sonia. And on taking leave of the governor's wife, when she again smilingly said to him, well then, remember, he drew her aside. But see here, to tell the truth, aunt. What is it, my dear? Come, let's sit down here, said she. Nicholas suddenly felt a desire and need to tell his most intimate thoughts, which he would not have told his mother, his sister, or his friend, to this woman, who was almost a stranger. When he afterwards recalled the impulse to unsolicited and inexplicable frankness, which had very important results for him, it seemed to him, as it seemed to everyone in such cases, that it was merely some silly whim that seized him. Yet that burst of frankness, together with other trifling events, had immense consequences for him and for all his family. You see, aunt, Mamma has long wanted me to marry an heiress, but the very idea of marrying for money is repugnant to me. Ah, yes, I understand, said the governor's wife. But Princess Bolkonskaya, that's another matter. I will tell you the truth. In the first place, I like her very much. I feel drawn to her. And then, after I met her under such circumstances, so strangely the idea often occurred to me, this is fate. Especially if you remember that Mamma had long been thinking of it. But I had never happened to meet her before. Somehow, it had always happened that we did not meet. And as long as my sister Natasha was engaged to her brother, it was of course out of the question for me to think of marrying her. And it must needs happen that I should meet her just when Natasha's engagement had been broken off, and then everything. So you see, I never told this to anyone, and never will, only to you. The governor's wife pressed his elbow gratefully. You know Sonia, my cousin. I love her, and promised to marry her, and will do so. So you see, there can be no question about, said Nicholas incoherently and blushing. My dear boy, what a way to look at it. You know Sonia has nothing, and you yourself say Papa's affairs are in a very bad way. And what about your mother? It would kill her, that's one thing. And what sort of life would it be for Sonia if she's a girl with a heart? Your mother in despair, and you all ruined? No, my dear, you and Sonia ought to understand that. Nicholas remained silent. It comforted him to hear these arguments. All the same, aunt, impossible, he rejoined with a sigh after a short pause. Besides, would the princess have me? And besides, she is now in mourning. How can one even think of it? But you don't suppose I'm going to get you married at once? There is always a right way of doing things, replied the governor's wife. What a matchmaker you are, aunt, said Nicholas, kissing her plump little hand. All right, so that concludes my reading of chapter 264. I will now proceed to my reflection on the same. A Year of War and Peace, day 264. Masks. Know thyself. That pithy Delphic aphorism inscribed in the forecourt of the Temple of Apollo has enjoyed a lengthy purchase throughout the ages, from its extensive employment in the great Socratic dialogues to its more humble station as a popular, though unfortunate, tattoo decision. Today its wisdom is manifest as Nicholas Rostov is confronted with what may prove to be the most important decision of his young life. Just yesterday, we asked why fate had placed Nicholas in Voreshnev. The governor's wife answers that question when she takes him aside at the party to ask if he would like for her to arrange a marriage match with Princess Mary Bolkonskaya, who also just happens to be in town. While initially Nicholas is struck flush with shyness and fear at this suggestion, he eventually comes to understand the gravity and conflict facing him. Recall that he promised Sonia he would marry her. Recall also that his mother expects him to marry a rich heiress because, frankly, the Rostovs are broke. Mary is a rich heiress. Her wealth could unbreak them. Nicholas, however, rebels against this logic. The very idea of marrying for money repulses me, he tells the governor's wife. On the other hand, he feels a unique fondness for Mary. He likes her very much. He sees his rescue of her as fate at work. So, he must choose. Will he marry Sonia or Mary? In order to help him make this decision, he could return to our initial meditation here at A Year of War and Peace, the one about the roles that we play in life. Is it more virtuous to play the role of a dutiful son and make his mother happy by marrying Mary? Or is it better to honor his promises and marry Sonia? Is there some alternative act? In the end, it's up to Nicholas himself to decide what mask he wants to don and what character he wants to play. Daily meditation. But this, you say, would not be worthy of me. Well then, it is you who must introduce this consideration into the inquiry, not I. For it is you who know yourself, how much you are worth to yourself, and at what price you sell yourself. For men sell themselves at various prices. Epictetus, Discourses. All right, that concludes my reading and reflection on chapter 264 of War and Peace. I hope you enjoyed it. Thanks so much for joining me. Remember that if you'd like to support me, you can do so either by purchasing the ebook, A Year of War and Peace, becoming a patron at patreon.com, or making a one-time donation to PayPal. The links to all that are down below in the show notes. Tomorrow, we're going to be reading and reflecting on chapter 265. I hope you'll join me. Until then, take care of yourselves and others.